Welcome to Breaking Par with Bernard Sheridan, the golf podcast that interviews the best and brightest minds in the golf industry. Now, here's your host, Bernard Sheridan.
Steve, welcome to Breaking Par. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you.
So, Steve, give us a little bit of a background about how you ended up getting involved in golf. I know that you were involved in another sport before that. But what brought you to golf?
Well, I had a zone experience on the tennis court when I was a senior at the University of Pennsylvania playing on the team that got me in this direction of trying to understand these kinds of zone experiences that people have. And my background was not in golf, it was in tennis. And in 1981, I moved to San Diego about 10 minutes from Torrey Pines Golf Course in Del Mar, right down the road. And I started playing, and I got completely hooked on the sport. I thought, this is an extraordinary sport. And in my mind, there's no better feeling in sports than hitting a solid golf shot. So I was hooked, not at an early age, but at an age young enough that I was able to take up the game and play many, many years. And of course, I still play today.
So what made you decide to pursue and write the book, Fluid Motion Factor, and what is that program bringing to the world of golf?
Well, I've always been fascinated in answering one question. And that question is, it's a very simple question. What really happens during the zone experience in a sport, and why does it happen? And I got hooked up, fortunately, with a neuroscientist about 10 years ago who worked with the Norwegian Olympic Athletic Committee for 5 years. And he went really deep from a neurophysiological perspective on how fluid motion is produced and why athletes have zone experiences. And it's as you know, as all golfers know, it's a very subtle thing when someone does play well. They can't quite put their finger on it. And I wanted to take that, which is sort of, a little mysterious and mercurial and transcendental in a way, and I wanted to bring it to the bright sunlight of understanding and taking the mystery away. So every year I would sit down with this neuroscientist. His name is Dr. Fred Travis. And we would go deep into transformations that happen in the brain physiology that allow someone to produce fluid motion. And over the years, my program, which I started developing essentially in the beginning in 1975 when I had this zone experience on the tennis court, it started to go through many, many iterations. And I would speak with Dr. Travis. I would add things to the program. I would spend literally hundreds and hundreds of hours hitting balls and playing and trying to come up with a technique that would allow someone to experience by chance what they allow someone to experience by design what they normally experience by chance. And it's so subtle, and it has its own nuances, and it has its own laws of nature. And unless you pay homage and respect it, it can humble you in a second, as everybody knows when they're playing golf, that one shot, the whole thing is gone, and then they can't quite recapture it. So it was a fascinating journey and adventure for me over many years to have this program go through so many iterations. But finally, I think that the book is more or less closed on it, and the program that I teach now, I think I'll be teaching just about exactly the same for the rest of my life.
So when was that book published originally, the first copy of it? And How long did it take you through this study when you started this to come to that point where you began to write the book and then actually bring it to fruition?
Well, I would say the book, I think, is out 4 years now. So we're 2017, came out, I believe, in 2013. It literally, it took from 1975 to 2013 to gather the understanding, to have the personal experience, to sit down and write that book. That book came out very, very easily. It's the second book that I wrote. The first book I wrote is called The 7 Secrets of World-Class Athletes, which talks about producing fluid motion in different sports. This book just talks about the dynamics and what happens in producing fluid motion in regards to golf. And the first book was very tedious to write. The second book was completely effortless. I would get up every morning at about 5 o'clock. I would write 1,000 words. I did this for 6 weeks, and the thing was done. And it almost felt like the book was writing itself. It was quite a unique experience. And then, of course, it took 8 or 10 months to edit it. That's what it really takes to write a book, is the editing. And so it's been out for 4 years now.
Now, when a student wants to participate in this, I don't want you to give away all the secrets of the book, of course, but just walk us through like a general session, a breakdown a little bit.
Sure.
Of what they do when they come to you, and some of the steps that they do to achieve this.
So the first thing that I do with everyone who goes through the program is I give them a whiteboard presentation of about a half hour of how fluid motion is produced in the body during a golf swing, what happens, and why it shuts down. So they have a complete overview of what really happened when they had a solid ball striking day, and why they weren't able to replicate that occurrence, that experience, if they weren't the next day. Then immediately after that, we go to the range, the lesson tee. This program it's not a philosophy, as you know. It's not, I have to read the books and I have to study and this and that. No, this is something that you actually do. So I watch them hit balls for a little bit just to get a feel for where they are in their golf game. And the program itself is set up with what I call 4 sets of fluid cues. And these fluid cues set up by design what someone normally experiences by chance. So, and each set of fluid cues gets more powerful. So we start off with telling them to do something, as you know, telling them to give away some of the secrets here. It's fine. Telling them to think the number 9 in the pre-shot routine, any way they want, fast, slow, stop, go, doesn't matter. And then they get over the ball, and right before they pull the trigger, they stop thinking of the number 9. And then when they pull the trigger, they just think of one long 9 during the swing, and it really doesn't matter where it stops. But the key element in this program is where you think any thought from. So where you think the numbers from. So the mind can be considered an ocean. There are surface active levels where you're thinking a lot and discriminating, and then you stop thinking and the mind settles down. So there are also softer, quieter levels of the mind. So the relationship between the mind and the body is this. It's a very exact relationship. When you think a thought from a surface level of the mind, you only have access to the surface level of the intelligence of the body, of the muscles. But when a thought is generated from a very soft, quiet level of the mind, you have access to the deeper levels of intelligence of the body. So when someone has their best ball striking days, for whatever reason, for sure they're not aware of these dynamics to the extent that they should be, they're generating intentions from a soft level of the mind. Therefore, the body's intelligence is enlivened and is accessible. So by thinking a number very softly, just so softly that you're not even too sure that you're thinking the number, okay? It may be there, it may not be there. Then all of a sudden you have access to that level of the intelligence of the body where you're able to access your muscle memory and become more consistent.
Now, there's a product out, not to give a plug to any products at all, but there's a product out that we use at Impact Zone Golf called Focus Band. And that kind of and we have someone who's an expert at that at our facility, and that's the type of thing that they use to help try to get into the zone or to try to get the mind quiet, things like that. What do you think of that product, and what do you think also, because this is a real important question to me personally, right brain, left brain, is there such a thing as that, or is it more other parts of the brain that are really doing this soft focus motion, this fluid motion factor?
First of all, I love the Focus Band. I use it whenever I teach. I've sold over 90 of them. It sells itself, actually, after someone goes through the program. I never use it before someone goes through the program because they won't have the intellectual understanding of just the ramifications of what they're seeing on that app between, being in the red, being in the green, or getting the quiet eye. So I'm a tremendous fan of the Focus Band. It gives objective verification of a subjective experience. I think every golfer should have one, just as a tuning fork. And it does legitimize the fact, obviously, that we know that the brain physiology produces fluid motion. It's not the body. It's something that happens in the brain. As far as this left brain, right brain, that's not the most comprehensive and fundamental understanding of how the brain functions. There's been groundbreaking research, actually, by Dr. Fred Travis with the Norwegian Olympic Athletic Committee that showed that those athletes that were consistently medaling in national, international, and Olympic games, their brain physiology was operating more in a holistic manner than the fellow athletes that they had on the team that were not medaling. So when someone does produce fluid motion, you can't say it's the right brain shuts down or the left brain shuts down. It's that the brain as a whole is communicating with the different spheres and the different elements of the brain simultaneously, and the key word is holistically.
And that's really important to understand, I think, because there's always been talk of, left brain, right brain, one's got to shut down for the other one to operate, and to me, I just wanted to, from your opinion, get that cleared up. I know that you're an expert in this field. I know that this is what you do for a living, and who better to ask that question than you?
No, I appreciate that. I don't consider myself an expert like Fred Travis, who has a PhD essentially in EEG and brain physiology. But I've learned from him, so he's my teacher. So this left brain, right brain, it's sort of pop psychology, okay? It doesn't really, when the rubber meets the road and someone, Tom Brady yesterday, or who's the Falcons quarterback, Matt Ryan, when they're really on and they can look down the field and they have, a couple 300-pound linemen, coming at them trying to take off their heads, the only way that Matt or Tom can see all this action taking place and anticipating where the receiver is going to be and where the defenders are is if their brain physiology is operating holistically. It has to operate holistically. So I think the right brain, left brain is a little pop psychology. You have to be creative. You have to shut down the analytical thing. Well, that may be okay for doing a calculus problem, but not for producing fluid motion.
Sure. So it's just a natural thing that's just going to happen through the physiology of repetition of what the athletes are used to doing. Some guys do it automatically. They don't even think about doing it. They don't have to think about a number or anything like that. It's just something that they do naturally. They're probably some of the greatest athletes in the world, and they don't even know how they're doing it. Probably they just do it.
Yeah, the great athletes are pre-wired with a certain athletic ability. Like it's like I use the analogy of a light bulb. You have a 50-watt bulb, a 75-watt bulb, a 150-watt bulb. Well, the great athletes, they have a 150-watt bulb. They are pre-wired at birth for this athletic excellence. Now, that doesn't mean that someone can't improve, their wiring, so to speak, but, no matter how much Tom Kite worked on his game, he's never going to hit the ball like Tiger Woods. It's impossible. So the great athletes, they're pre-wired with that, and they have the ability to access that. There's a lot of and that's the key, okay? There's a lot of tremendously talented athletes in all sports that never break through. I mean, you can see this if you go on a web.com tour, you see swings and you're saying to yourself, why isn't this person, on the PGA Tour? Well, the pre-wiring is there, but the ability to access what they already own is compromised and is challenged. So you need both really to be a supreme athlete.
Now, do you think that it's more difficult to access that in the sport of golf than it is in other sports?
Personally, I do. Golf is a brutal sport. It's brutal. It's unlike tennis. You get so many chances. I mean, I was watching the Australian Open, right before you called, a tape of it. And in tennis, you can go south for an hour and a half or 2 hours in a match. You could be down 6-love, 5-love, 40-love, and you can come back and win. It's happened in major championships. In golf, 2 or 3 swings, that's it. Jordan Spieth, 12 at the Masters. Okay, 1 shot, 2, he's done. That's it. So what it takes, because the ramifications are so severe if you miss a shot in golf versus basketball or baseball or tennis or soccer, you get so many chances that it really takes a supreme kind of brain physiology to be operating in that environment, especially because you're initiating motion and you're not reacting to motion. So yes, I think golf is the king of sports in regards to this.
Yeah, I think that what you just said, that last sentence, was initiating or reacting. In all other sports, and I've always tried to get that across to my students, the ball is in motion, or the object that the projectile, whatever it may be, is in motion. It's not just sitting there waiting for you to react and waiting for you to do something. And a good example of that I always use is I just grab a ball without even saying anything to them and throw it to them. And immediately they catch it. And I say to them, when you caught that, were you thinking about how to catch it? Were you thinking about what your hand should do? Or no, you were reacting to it. So the fluid motion factor kind of helps that reaction part move into play without trying to force it into play.
Well, you can't force it. If you can force it, you would do it every time.
Sure.
You can't be a bull in a china shop. Good round. You don't attack good rounds. Good rounds find you. And but when they do find you, the dynamics of transformation that happen in the brain physiology are exactly the same for a 16 handicap player as they are for Justin Thomas or Tiger or Rory or Phil or anybody else. It's just that these athletes, they have access to that a little bit more readily than your 16 handicap golfer.
Well, and also their ability level is much higher.
Exactly. Too. Of course, exactly.
Not just the mental part of it, and then of course they can do that more often than a 16 handicap.
It's so interesting that when I work with a player, and I work with mostly elite golfers, on tour or college golfers or mini tour players, and I asked them, when you played your best golf, after let's say you've had your best ball striking round in 6 months, and you walk off the course, and someone asks you, Stephen, why did you play so well? Virtually, if you ask enough questions, they're going to say, I don't know. If you ask enough questions, and these are guys, I'm talking about guys who have won major championships that I can't mention their names, but that I work with. They don't know. And then they go out the next day and they do exactly what they thought the day before, and they have a miserable ball striking day. And they walk off the course, and you ask them, Stephen, why did you play so poorly today? You played so great yesterday. And they say, I don't know. I thought I was doing exactly what I did the day before. So even for elite golfers, the elite of the elite golfers, there is not, I underline this, there is not a fundamental and clear understanding of what it takes to play consistent golf. Now, do you think there's something wrong with that picture?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, when you look at top professionals, and that's why you don't see too many PGA pros winning multiple events in a year. Let's say, like that year that Vijay Singh had, where he won like 12 events in 1 year. I think it was back in. It's been a while. I can't recall the exact year that was. I want to say 97. It might not have been that long ago, but it was remarkable, and he had to be tapping into that, no doubt, to play at that level and win that many events in 1 year.
Byron Nelson won 11 in a row. Okay, we know that. And David Ledbetter, I teach at the Ledbetter Academy here in Orlando, once asked him about that experience. And he said, this is Byron Nelson talk. He said, when I was on that stretch, I practiced very little because I already knew what I had to do. And if I practiced more, I just felt I would have more of a chance of moving outside of that space. So, which I thought was very interesting, comment by Byron Nelson. But that space that he was talking about, or that space that Vijay got in when he won so many tournaments, that's the space everybody's looking for. Now, if you sat down with Vijay, or you had the opportunity to sit down with Byron and ask them, now, let's describe the space. How did it feel? They would talk very subjectively. They would talk, well, it just felt like time slowed down, had a lot of time. I wasn't thinking that much, and my body was just able to make transitions in the swing and self-correct things, even though if I was doing something mechanically wrong. Well, all three of those subjective experiences, time slowing down, the mind becoming very quiet, and the body becoming liquid enough to make self-corrections, it's all based on one neurophysiological experience you have in the mind, which I call the fluid motion factor. But unfortunately, what happens is that people stumble upon this by chance. They're certainly not doing a systematic program to set it up by design so it could happen more often when they play.
Well, Ben Hogan used to say that he would try to do things half speed before he got to the course. And as he got ready,
interesting,
tie his shoes half speed, walk to the first tee at half speed, do everything at half speed, so that he would kind of start to tap in to something. And he didn't say what it was, but he did say tap into that area where everything was just fluid tempo. Everything was just fluid. And just like you're saying. And I wonder if something like that was the way that he kind of started to tap into that. Nope. And whether that would help players in general. I know that I always say to most of my players, do you have time to warm up before you play your round? Do you have? And a lot of them don't. A lot of them get in the car, they drive up there, they drop off their bag, they walk up, they hit a couple of putts, and they're off to the first tee.
Everyone has their little sort of tuning fork, that they use. Ben Hogan was to slow everything down. And, it's impossible to play good golf if you're experiencing everything speeding up. I don't have to tell you that.
Sure.
Other golfers, they try to do whatever they can because if they played enough golf, they've had enough good golf experiences and they remember subjectively that feeling. They're searching for the feeling. It's like a hunt for the feeling. And in my program, you don't have to hunt. That you do something very specific. Now, it's not to say that it's going to work like a miracle cure every time. There's no program that's going to do that. But it does tremendously increase your chances of you having a consistent ball striking day that day.
Well, I know that I have, of course, when we were speaking before we went on, I have tried this program. I'm yet to be certified in it. A few things happened in my life that prevented me from completing the certification. I eventually will do that. But when I have played and I have tried this program, I can definitely say from personal effect of that it worked very well. It didn't work every time, but it did work more often than not for me. It allowed me to play much better golf. I always found, too, that when I play, if I don't have anything to do other than play golf that day, I usually play better, too. And if I'm not trying to rush to, say, get through my round and then I have to be at such and such by such a time, that would actually make me play worse because I wasn't able to tap into that fluid motion.
Right. I think that's a normal experience, Bernard, okay, that the people have that. So, and just so you know, I developed a fourth set of fluid cues that are more powerful than the first set of three that I think has taken the program to another level and would give you the opportunity to have it work more often when you play.
Well, it's a great program. It really is. And I think that you've really tapped into something that has been so evasive for so many players for so long. And I highly encourage anyone out there who wants to become a better, consistent player to get in touch with you and to either go through your program in person or online or however it is that they can do it. So what are some of the ways that players can do that, and what are some of the ways that instructors can do that to get involved in this?
Well, thank you. I appreciate your kind words, Bernard. I teach the program at the Ledbetter Golf Academy here in Champions Gate in Orlando. So anyone is more than welcome to come and go through the program in person here. I also have an online teacher certification program that's available to become certified to teach the program. And the online program can also be used if you're a player to improve your game. You just listen to it from the perspective as a player rather than as a teacher. And then I wrote two books. The first one is The 7 Secrets of World-Class Athletes. And the second one is The Fluid Motion Factor, Understanding the Source of Exceptional Golf. Both books are available on my website, which is fluidmotiongolf.com, fluidmotiongolf.com, or on Amazon.
Great. Awesome. And how often are you in Orlando? Are you in Orlando a lot where people can, or is there specific times of years, or are you there and then you're someplace else? Because I've seen that you've traveled to different places and worked with university teams and things of that nature.
Yes, I do traveling. I have quite an extensive history of working with universities around the country, but I'm in Orlando from September to May. I'll be here until May 1st. And then I spend my summers in Iowa, 4 months, and then I come back. So, and I teach in Iowa at the University of Iowa facility at Finkbein. If you know about that course, it's just a world-class course and teaching facility. So I teach over the summer there as well.
That's great, Steve. Well, thanks so much for being with us today. It was an absolute pleasure. But before we go, there's just a couple of things that I wanted to. There's standard questions that we're asking all our guests, and
Sure.
Not talking about fluid motion factors the book, but if you could recommend one book other than your own that you would think would be a great read for our listeners out there, what would you recommend?
Wow. That's a very interesting question.
And it doesn't have to be about golf. It can be anything that you think is just a great book that you would recommend.
The Inner Game of Tennis.
Okay. All right. And that's another book that can definitely help you tap into that feeling, yes?
Yeah. Tim Galway, he knew the destination quite clearly and he was the first to use this phrase that I ever heard, and that is accessing the inner intelligence of the physiology, the inner genius of the physiology. And it's a very simple book. It has to do with tennis, but it's applicable to all sports.
Great. Well, thanks very much for that. Thanks again for being a great guest, giving some awesome information to our audience. And until we meet again, keep it in the short grass.
Thanks, Bernard. I really appreciate it.
All right, take care.
Take care.
You've been listening to Breaking Par with your host, Bernard Sheridan. Follow us on Twitter @BreakingPar and on Facebook @Par Breakers Golf Academy. Until next week, try to keep it on the short grass.